Well, good evening, Springfield Faith Center, and thank you for joining us today. This is the Sunday, what is this, May something, 24th. May 24th, and we are going to be discussing Matt's message from this morning and what he had to share with us regarding darkness and its role in the Christian journey. So anyway, thanks for being here, and let's go around and we can all introduce ourselves to start with. Dustin, do you want to go first?
Sure. Most people know primarily my wife because she's the children's ministry director, Shayna. She's awesome. I also help with high school, done that, and worship. Kind of whatever people need. If I can do it, I'm there. So.
Yep. He's one of the drummers who hides off camera in the back. You can barely see him. So, yeah. All right, Matt, you want to go ahead and introduce yourself?
Yeah, I'm the worship pastor. So I try to run the Sunday morning services, coordinate all the teams, all that good stuff.
Yep. And Bev, go ahead and introduce yourself.
I'm Bev, and I lead the women's ministry team, and I play for worship and teach Sunday school and whatever happens to be needed around the church.
That's right. Yep. And my name's Daniel, and I'm on staff at the church, one of the pastors. So again, welcome. Thank you for joining us this evening. So let's go ahead and go around, and we will each start by sharing kind of our primary takeaway from this morning. What were you impacted by from the message that Matt shared with us today? So Dustin, can I start with you, or do you want me to come back?
Yeah, no, you start with me.
All right, go for it.
I think the whole concept of leaning into the darkness, where growing up, it's like you stay away from that, but it's not saying, I think like what I took away was not going to the darkness, not choosing the dark things, but leaning into what you can what God has for you in those seasons where things feel hopeless. Because there is, I think, treasure and things God wants to iron out in your character through those hard times. So that's kind of what I took away from it.
Yeah. I'm always reminded that in Psalm 23, the valley of the shadow of death, like David is there because God walked him there. He's not there because he made bad mistakes or there because of an accident or whatever. He's there because that was part of the journey. It was intended. So, yeah. Bev, let's go with you next. What was sort of your takeaway this morning from what Matt shared?
The thing that probably rang with me the most was also similar to Dustin's, was not running away from dark times, not trying to avoid those dark times, but I want to take advantage of them. I want to receive out of those times everything I can get out of them in my relationship with the Lord, and not waste them. I mean, there's no point in going through them and just wasting them and coming out the other side saying, phew, I made it. But did I bring anything back with me? Did I grow through that time? And that was important. I really enjoyed hearing more of Matt and Grace's story, because I haven't heard a lot of that. And I can relate. We went through some really hard times early in our family life also. And I remember hitting the point money-wise where you're just like, what are we going to do? And in our case, we chose to tithe, but we weren't able to do the whole amount. You just have to choose what you can do, and God honors that.
Yeah.
He's not, it's not a rule. It's not that he's making this law for us. He's teaching us generosity and how to rely on him. So, but it was nice. I could relate a lot to your life story.
Yeah. And it was obvious from your story, Matt, that you guys were definitely having to learn how to lean on him and rely on him in that season. So for me this morning, it was a lot about the leaning in as well. But for me, I think the metaphor that really struck me was that the reminder from the standpoint of physics, that there is much more to light than what we can see. Light is this fairly broad concept. Light just describes energy, radiation in all of its forms. And there's only a pretty small section of the wavelength that's visible to us. I like the Battlestar Galactica reference. I haven't even seen most of Battlestar Galactica, but it made sense. Like,
yep.
I know, nerd card revoked or whatever.
Yep.
But just that idea that in any given circumstance, my vision is limited. Mm-hmm. Like, my ability to take in all of the information is limited. I'm human, and I'm only going to see with my fairly narrow perspective, and try as I might. There's going to be limitations in the middle of that. And the goal for me is always going to come back to this place of recognizing God has all the information. God sees all of it. He understands what's going on. This is not darkness to him, because to me, darkness is just how I interpret not having enough like input. You were telling that story about being a kid and walking through the house and having to learn how to navigate that. You were missing input. There was information that you didn't have. Mm-hmm. And I think for me, like that was the impacting thing this morning, was being reminded that in a very real way, visibility, what I see, the light that I perceive is really about the information that I'm collecting, what I know, what I'm aware of, and realizing that I'm limited, and my ability to gather all of that and know what to do with it is limited. But for God, it's not. God is never in the dark. God is never at a loss. There's never any moment where something happens and he kind of stands back and scratches his head and says, well, what do I do now? Like, they really threw me a curveball with this. With any of these events. And so the goal is always interest in him and lean on him and his guidance and leadership, because he's trustworthy, because he knows what he's doing. So, yeah. Matt, did you have any other thoughts, any nuggets that you want to drop on us continuing from this morning, or any feedback?
Well, to echo you guys, I think a huge part of recognizing what darkness is in our life is recognizing that there is more in the darkness. Mm-hmm. I grew up in the church with imagery of darkness being evil, being the place right. that you don't go, that you avoid, that you run away from. Mm-hmm. But darkness, like with our vision, it's an ever-present thing. We can only see so much. And the hard part is, younger generations are growing up thinking, well, if I'm depressed, that means God has abandoned me.
Right.
Or if I worry, Jesus says, don't worry, but I worry. And that must mean that I'm not really following Jesus. And I think a huge part of leaning into the darkness is recognizing that Jesus is in the darkness with us.
Yeah.
That he's in our depression with us, that he's in our worry with us. And it's not, like Bev mentioned with the tithing, it's not a law. Yeah. It's a way of life. And following Jesus is a way of life that takes us into really dark places. Sometimes the darkness of our own souls, of dealing with trauma and arrogance and, narcissism or whatever, dealing with all the things that we didn't think we had in us. Sometimes darkness is just wandering through our own souls.
Yeah, definitely. All right, so let's go around again and let's take kind of the thoughts and the takeaways that we had, and then let's start answering the question. All right, if God wants to, if he wants to start leading you in that direction and working that into your life, what do you think that might look like? So Dustin, let's go back to you. You talked about that leaning into mm-hmm. him. As God sort of has taught you about that in the past, or as he continues to teach you about that, what does that sort of look like for you?
Well, I really loved the message this morning, Matt, because I was reading in my Bible this morning about Jesus going back to Jerusalem because of his friend Lazarus, who has passed away. And the disciples are like, they're trying to stone you, Jesus. We can't go there. And instead of like dissuading them or arguing with them, he's just like, guys, we've got 12 hours of daylight, and you can see in the daylight so you don't stumble. But in the darkness, you can't see, so you stumble. And I'm sure the disciples were scratching their heads like, what is he talking about? But I think he was really trying to tell them, like, I don't care that they're trying to stone me. There's darkness there. And if they don't see, they're going to stumble. Mm-hmm. And I need to be a light for them in that darkness. So, and it really kind of a light bulb moment came on for me where God was like, Dustin, that the sun is going to go down and it's going to get dark. So in preparation for that, we go out and we buy light bulbs because we know it's going to get dark. So for me, it's reminding myself that there are going to be dark times, but am I stocking up on quote unquote spiritual light bulbs? Am I spending time with God and bringing him with me? So when those things get tough, I have something that's going to light up that darkness. So I can see the things around me that I need to be learning or leaning on, so it's not so oppressive. It's not overwhelming. I don't shut down. Yeah. So spending time with God regularly is something I need to get better at. So yeah, that's kind of the things that I've kind of gleaned from that.
I like that idea of intentionally and deliberately keeping God close, staying close to him, because that he's the source of light, and you're going to need the light that he provides. Even if you don't feel like you need it now, tomorrow or in 5 minutes, something might happen and you're going to realize that you need him there. That practice of staying in his presence. That's good. I like that. Bev, what about for you? What does that process either look like, having worked out in your life in the past, or as you move forward, what do you see God leading you into there?
Well, one thing he's been revealing to me lately is the whole issue of control and surrender. And when we are wandering around in the dark, we try to take charge of it ourselves. We think it's scary, so we're going to just take charge. And really, we need to be led.
Yeah.
We really have to turn loose of that control, turn loose of our will in that process, and allow him to be our guide, and allow him to be my everything in that process.
Yeah.
No matter what it looks like to me, he's always got a plan for me. He always has the best plan for me. Right. So if I trust him with that, I come out of it on the other side in such a better place. I come out of it in the middle in such a better place, right, because I have done that in the process.
And that was, as you were talking, that was the first thing that I thought of, because at the beginning you talked about how those seasons of darkness are building something. They're constructing something for you. God is leading you somewhere. And if I take control in the middle of that, then in my experience, at least, I don't end up at that constructive place that he wants me to get to. That constructive thing only gets realized when I can surrender and when I can let him guide me through that. So
I learned when I was going through the process of grief and through Stan's illness, through my husband's illness, that I did not want to ever say, why me? Because it seemed like such a pointless question. Because my other question was, well, why not me? Other people, everybody goes through hard stuff. So why me is a really pointless, self-defeating question. I would rather say, God, just take me through this.
Yeah.
Let's get through this. What's the plan? So.
Yeah, exactly. There's an old devotional. I never read it, but I remember the title. Because the title is "Just Enough Light for the Step I'm On." And that phrase, it was when I was working at the Christian bookstore. I always saw the devotional on the shelf, and and like I said, I never read it, but the title always stuck with me. So anyway, for me, I think that, as God walks me through this, I think part of it is that letting go of control, because there's the temptation to rely on what I can see and to assume that that's all the information that there is, that I can see everything, and to make decisions.
To figure it out for yourself.
Yeah. And to make decisions based on that, and to fall into that place of forgetting that God sees so much more than I do, and to kind of stay in that space of letting go and trusting and knowing that he's going to call me into moments and seasons of activity. There's stuff he's going to ask me to do, but it's not about, the doing is not going to be about controlling the whole thing and white knuckling it. The doing is going to be about that partnership with him and trusting in him. So maintaining that tender place with him, of constantly going, who was I talking to about this? But I feel like so many times I start off by letting go of control and saying, all right, God, talk. And then 5 minutes later, I've picked it back up again, and I'm in charge. And it's this constant practice of going back to him saying, all right, God, what do I need to surrender? What do I need to lay down? Again and again and again, and trust in him. So,
well, let me put out a metaphor, because we're talking about control. For a period of my life, I was in construction and home design, and it's amazing because you sit down with these designers, these architects and engineers, and they come up with these blueprints and these plans, and they say, okay, go forward. And what inevitably happens every time is the homeowner or the building owner steps in and makes changes during the process. Rather than just trusting what the end product is going to be, they want to make changes. They want to be in control. And so the engineer or the contractor or architect has to go back and change plans, and it costs more. And that tends to be a lot of what we end up doing with God, is we go to him and we're like, okay, I see where you're going with this kinda, but I don't like what you're doing. So I want to make this change. I want marble instead of laminate. And then God goes, oh, I guess we can do that, but it's going to cost more.
Yeah.
And we don't want to trust what the end product is going to be.
One of my favorite visual things of trust is in the Indiana Jones movie, where he's told to take a step forward and he can't see the stone he's supposed to step on. It's out over the chasm, and he has to take a step, and the stone appears right as his foot hits it. I love that image of trust.
Yeah. Oh my goodness.
The thing, to carry on that movie scene, the thing about that scene that still gets me to this day is that, because the camera in that moment then pans up over his shoulder and then goes down to the side. And you can see when it goes up over his shoulder that for him, from his perspective, he still can't see the bridge. He knows he's standing on something, but it's still too camouflaged to see. And it's not until the camera swings down to the side that the viewers, we can see clearly. But you even see Harrison Ford in that moment kind of like trying to crane his neck and look around, because he knows he's standing on something, but even when he's standing on it, he still can't see it. And he's trying to figure out what's going on. Such a good movie.
Yeah.
I need to go watch that movie. See you guys later. So, all right. That's good. Those are really good thoughts. Anybody else have any final thoughts before we close up?
I think the final thing that I would say is, when you find yourself in the darkness, don't feel guilty or shame.
Good one.
The worst thing you can do to yourself in that time is be like, I should not be here. What is wrong with me?
Yeah.
I think the best thing to do, if you're in the darkness and you can't figure out where the light is or what you could be doing, is to reach out to somebody. If you're depressed, reach out to somebody and say, I'm going through depression. I need some prayer. And more often than not, when you reach out to somebody, they're going to reach back and say, hey, how can I pray for you? Let's get some coffee or whatever. Let's Zoom if that's all we got right now.
Right.
But don't shame yourself because of the darkness. Look for people. And often, it was God this morning. I didn't even have this in my message until maybe like 10 minutes before. But God said, don't forget that you're supposed to take this further. And I remember that as Christians, this Holy Spirit is within us, and we become the light that Jesus is shining into the world.
Right.
And so it is our turn, coming out of the darkness or even in the darkness, that we take that light to the next place.
Yeah. I love it. Well, good stuff. Thank you guys very much for being here tonight and for sharing this time and participating. And thank you, everybody who's watching this. Have a wonderful night. Have a wonderful week. And we will see you all. Stay safe. Wash your hands. And we will see you all hopefully very soon. Have a good night.
Bye, guys.
Bye. Bye.